What up, DLLS Cowboys crew? Welcome to Radio Row in New Orleans. We are currently joined by the two-time NFL Coach of the Year, Ron Rivera. Thank you so much for joining us.
Appreciate it, guys. Good to be here.
Thank you, man.
It is. It's great to visit with you, and I feel like the coaching fraternity, everybody kind of knows everybody,
Mm-hmm.
and because we are the Cowboys and they have a brand new head coach, I feel like I have to ask you
Yes.
your thoughts and perceptions on Brian Schottenheimer.
I think Shotty's a good, young, bright mind in the league. You know, I shouldn't say young. He's been around it his whole life. You know, his father was a very good coach in this league for years, and you can tell he's a chip off the old block. I think he is an aggressive play caller in terms of wanting to run the football. I think play action will play a big part of what he wants to do offensively. It's really interesting. You think about what they did as far as, you know, going out there, interviewing guys, starting with Mike. He wanted to keep Mike, and I think the reason behind that more so than anything else was what he was trying to create, in my opinion, was he wanted to keep the same offense. Mm-hmm. Okay? The less changes on offense, the better it is, especially when you've got a veteran group. You've got a veteran quarterback. You've got a good wide receiver core. You've got a stout offensive line that had some trouble because of injuries. You've got decent tight ends. You've got a running game that you got to get better at. You really do. And I think he understands that, and that's why he wanted to stick with Mike. When Mike decided to pull out, that's when he went. Kellen Moore was the guy that was being interviewed. Shotty was a guy that was being interviewed, and I also know he interviewed a couple of defensive guys.
Right.
You can change your defense a lot easier than you can change your offense. And Jerry wants to win now. I believe Jerry knows that, you know, unfortunately he's not going to be around forever, but he wants to get back into the Super Bowl game.
When you've been a coordinator like Shotty was for such a long time and never having the big chair, how big of a challenge? Like, how different is the life when you walk in and now it's yours?
Well, I think it's a little bit different for him because he's been around it. He's seen his father go through those things. A lot of times when you've never been that guy, it's going to be difficult. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to bump your head a lot. I promise you that. When I was a head coach, the biggest mistake I made my first staff was I didn't have a former head coach on my staff, a guy to tell me to watch out for this and look out for that. And I think when you don't have that, you're going to make mistakes. And I made mistakes my first 2 years. What was interesting was after my second year, every year I would sit down, my first year sat down with the owner, went through the season, talked about things, talked about how we're going to correct things and what I wanted to do going forward. So we get into my second year, and same thing, I sit down. Each year we showed progress at the end. Mm-hmm. So I showed progress. We talked on it. Hey, we're going to build on this, want to do that. I said, but as I finished up, I said, I need a mentor. I said, I don't have a guy on my staff that's been through it, and I want to find a head coach that I can speak of. And it's funny because I had a guy in mind, and my owner starts laughing. Jerry Richardson starts to laugh, and he goes, Ron, I want you to look at this. So he slides over this index card, and I flip the index card over. It's John Madden. So I kind of chuckled a little bit. He goes, what's so funny, Ron? I said, well, that's the name I wanted to ask you about. He said, He and John Madden were roommates during the Senior Bowl, and they had become buddies and friends, and they stayed in contact, the rest of their lives. And so he thought that would be a perfect guy, and that's who I was thinking of. So I called Coach right away. We set up an appointment. I flew out there, met him. We sat down and we talked about things. We talked about the fact that I was 3-13 in games decided by 6 points or less. And the biggest thing he told me, use your gut, go with your gut. So you have to have that guy that can tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. So many times people around you, they want to tell you and make you feel good instead of being honest and saying, you screwed that up. I mean, I have players when I was in Carolina that I would listen to as well that would come in and they knew they could be honest with me. And that meant the world. That meant, and what had happened there was during that period, there was a time when these guys wouldn't say anything. And I encouraged them, guys, if you don't tell me, it's as if you were doing it yourself. Tell me so I can make these corrections. And I think Shotty's he's gonna have some credibility because he knows a lot of those guys. But how he handles it from this point on, that's going to dictate whether he has them or not.
How tough is it to be the coach of the Cowboys? I've been around here a long time. I remember when you would think early in your career you interviewed for the head coaching job. Yeah. Last year I think you interviewed for the defensive coordinator job. So you have a relationship with Jerry. You've talked to him on several different levels. How tough is it to be a coach of the Cowboys? And in your relationship with Jerry, how does Jerry hovering over everything make this thing different?
to me, what's important is you as a coach, and this is what I fought with for 4 years in Washington. What's important and what's interesting. If you can keep the guys focused on what's important to them, it's the day-to-day football, and keep the interesting things over here, you got a chance. In Washington, the things that we constantly fought were off-the-field stuff that I kept trying to get the media to just back off on and say, let's focus on what's important. Playing a game is important. I walk in the locker room, and I got guys getting in these huddles with these media guys, and they're asking questions about, well, when this happened over here 5 years ago, he wasn't here 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. The only reason he knows about it is because you bring it up. Let's stay focused on what's important. They're playing a football game. Keep it there. Keep that focus there. Well, great. Let Mr. Jones handle this stuff. Let's focus on this stuff. That's why I'm the coach. I'm going to focus just on this and try and get everybody to stay where they need to be, and that's focused on the upcoming football game.
How can you do that when Jerry's so focused on the other stuff? And that seeps into the locker room.
Because, that's one of the things you've got to try and prevent. You've got to try and keep it out of the locker room as much as possible. And you got to get players to understand that too. And you got to get players, it's understood the players answer to the coach. Mm-hmm. Okay? Sure, he's the owner and everybody knows he's a big personality. That's great. But he wants to win just as well.
You believe that he wants to win?
Oh, he does. Yes. I believe he does.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. But I think what people have to understand is, and the players have to be on board too, is that, hey, we got to handle the distractions ourselves as well. Mm-hmm. It's not just me as the head coach. I'm always directing. It's got to be handled that way.
You talked about continuity with the offense and how that's really important with the change of the coaching staff. Is there any dangers to keeping continuity from the previous staff?
There is, because there's a familiarity that's you got to be very careful with. To me, the worst thing is when you bring in another coach. Let's say you bring in a coordinator, and he's the only guy you change, and you keep everybody else. Mm-hmm. That's going to be hard on the coordinator because he's the new guy. So if something goes wrong, who are you going to blame? Oh, we're going to blame the new guy. Mm-hmm. That's why you got to be real careful. Change has to happen, and if it's not the right kind of change, you're gonna deal with some issues as well.
It's Ron Rivera with us, and you're here on behalf of the NFL Salute to Service Award presented by USAA. Can you just tell us a little bit about that?
I can. I'm a USAA member. My father was served in the United States Army 32 years. He was one of the original members way back when they first got started. I inherited it. My kids have inherited it. It's a financial services, insurance, banking, investments. I mean, just everything that you can need and use as a USA member. We've been very fortunate. USA supports the NFL Salute to Service Week, and it also supports the USAA Salute to Service Award, given to the guy that's gone out into the community of the military and given back. Everything from bringing in soldiers, giving tickets to soldiers, going to base visits, going to bringing them in and doing the football clinics that we do with them. That's what they celebrate. They celebrate players that do that, coaches that do that. Well, this year, the award winner is George Kittle, a guy that's been nominated a couple of times. Great personality, good person. It's just good to see George win it. I know he's been nominated several times, but really appreciative of everything that USA does, especially their support to the NFL Salute to Service.
Coach Ron Rivera, thank you so much for taking a few minutes for us. We appreciate it.
I appreciate it, guys. And just remember, go Cowboys, huh?
Thank you, Coach. Appreciate
All righty,
it.
guys.
Appreciate it. Thank you.